Our political parties in South Africa have been extremely busy launching their election manifestos as the general election day deadline looms. We continue to dissect the proposed economic policies put forward by these parties. And joining me today is the General Secretary of South Africa's third largest opposition party, the Inkatha Freedom Party. It's Sibongile Nkomo. Sibongile, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
I'm surprised you still have your voice, eh? You have not been out in the sticks campaigning and...
you won't believe it. We've been out every day trying to actually reach out to everybody in our country. And in the IFP, we're called the Secretary General, not the General Secretary.
Oh, the General Secretary is sort of communist, is that right? Yeah.
I'm not sure how they're called, but I'm called the Secretary General.
The Secretary General.
Thank you very much for having us.
You're welcome. Let's begin by just looking at what you guys stand for in terms of economic policy. Now, of course, in South Africa, the country is, really abandoned in terms of the stretch and wide of the different political views. We've got communists, we've got socialists, we've got capitalists, we've got free marketeers. Where do you stand? We are free marketeers.
We've always been free marketeers, even before '94, when the Inkatha Freedom Party was in charge of the then KwaZulu Eastwell government. So even up to today, we're still free marketeers. We still believe in the free market system. We still believe that there are certain aspects which are quite important. Even our manifesto today still borders around the free market system.
Yeah, one of the interesting aspects that I saw was the fact that you still believe in GEAR, the original growth employment equity program that was driven by the ANC so many years ago. What do you like in it that you can now add on to it now and actually maybe transform it a little bit?
Actually, you will be surprised that when the IFP, as well as other parties, but I'm going to talk about my party, when we actually went into parliament and GEAR was introduced by the ANC, and the IFP actually supported GEAR. We were actually in support of GEAR because we could see economic growth within the aspects of GEAR.
Right.
The surprising component is that GEAR could not be implemented fully by the ANC government then, or by the then ruling government as they are still ruling today. I remember that even COSATU was against GEAR. They were busy dancing around saying asifuni GEAR, asifuni GEAR, and that actually made GEAR to be a policy that had a lot of challenges in front of it. It was actually delivered in piecemeals, which was not good enough, and yet we really feel that if GEAR was implemented, it would have been.
Even today?
It would have worked even today if it was actually large chunks of GEAR which were implemented instead of these very small piecemeals.
Okay, so let's talk about the main economic planks of that policy if the IFP were to come into government at the next election.
If we were to come into government this next coming election, there are a few things which we believe in. The first area is the area of the increased fixed investments, where we talk of stabilizing policies, where our fiscal policies would need to come in, monetary policies and other policies. Let me talk about especially the stabilizing of policies in order to counter cyclic fluctuations. It is important that we actually look at the world and see how things are moving, and then we try and position ourselves in a way that we would look at, for instance, it is important for us to note that, some time back we had a recession in the whole world, and or certain countries were actually hit hard, and that had an effect on us as well. So if it has an effect of us, it actually works on our rand. It ensures that our rand actually has very little power. It ensures that all the issues or the areas of imports that we're bringing into the country become a bit expensive, because then our rand is lower in value. It actually makes it difficult even for us to export in large numbers, large quantities. So it really makes things a bit difficult for us. So looking at that and playing the game the way it should be played, not only nationally but also globally, that is very important. So that stabilization of policies are quite important. I think we will notice that the Minister of Finance, Pravin Gordhan, the Honorable Pravin Gordhan, when he gave us his input in Parliament, the first areas that he spoke about, it was all these global markets and all those areas, because we need to say to ourselves, or we need to realize that we're not just lone rangers.
Yeah.
We are operating within a broader global market where we need to ensure that we play the game the way it should be played.
The ANC would argue that they have got these policies in place now. They have put in place counter-cyclical policies to try and counter the impact of the slowdown that we've seen in some of the major markets. What would you change in respect to those policies?
It would be important for us to actually state that, you know, in changing whatever that needs to be changed, or the policies that we as the IFP feel need to be changed, we need to say to ourselves, is there a full evaluation of those policies to ensure that they haven't worked? Because some of them really haven't worked, because like I said, that gear was actually absorbed in very, very small piecemeals. That had an effect on a lot of the cyclic type of sequence of events. So we would have said that please ensure that you open up the markets. You open the markets in such a way that even the traders or people that are coming in from outside the country can come in and trade. Because right now we do find that a lot of the policies that are looking at trade are actually making it very, very difficult for outsiders to come into the country, and that is creating a problem for us in South Africa, because if we have such policies, it means that even people that have good intentions to come into the country, to invest in the country, are actually moving out. Or if we actually allow some of the unions in the country that are there, who are busy destabilizing our economy through endless riots or endless picketing
strikes
and everything else, and strikes, endless. I'm saying endless. I'm not saying that they should not.
Do it.
Don't do it. But if they keep doing it the way they are doing it, they are actually sending our investors away. And that has an effect on our economy.
You sound like you're saying that you would deregulate further from where we are, because I looked at your labor policy, you would tinker around with it a little bit. You are talking about now trying to loosen a little bit the local market to try and get more foreigners to come in. So you would want to loosen the stranglehold that government has on the economy. Let's look at the other areas where you would change then. So you would say, you said you would want to get fixed investment into the country. What else would you change?
You know, we would also look at our, as part of our fiscal policy, would look at reforming the tax system. The tax system in our country is quite good. But it's just not good enough, because we do find that.
You want to collect more?
No. Let me explain what I'm saying.
Please go ahead.
There are certain areas where we can collect more, but there are certain areas where we need to be a bit lenient. We need to do that so that there is a balance in the two. The most important thing is that when we say we are collecting tax, we're collecting tax from the shareholders. And who are the shareholders? The shareholders are the men in the street. It's the man that is buying something, and then out of buying, there's a certain percentage that goes over to tax. We are saying part of our fiscal policy is that the end of that fiscal policy is that we need to account to the shareholders. We need to say to the shareholders, you have given us so much, which we have put into this big pot, which is the fiscus, which is the money which government is using. And then you have actually given it to us. You are the shareholders. And by being the shareholders, each and every cent that is being used from your monies, we need to account for it. Of which right now, there's a bit of a problem when it comes to accounting to the shareholders. The shareholders are actually left behind in such a way that in our country right now, we have quite a lot of areas where most of our shareholders are actually up in arms, because they are saying, what are you using our monies for?
So you
Why
would
are you not
reform a
accounting
little bit
to us?
how
So it
public
needs to be
companies
reformed.
are. Now, I want to understand, net, would you increase taxes or you would reduce taxes on business and on individuals?
I wouldn't say that we would do that now, but then sending forth researchers, as well as looking at the global market as well as the South African market, there will need to be an adjustment. There will need to be an adjustment where in certain areas.
But are you saying South Africans are overtaxed or undertaxed?
There are certain areas of being overtaxed where people are extremely dissatisfied. But then when it comes to tax, right throughout the world, people have never been satisfied. You go to the US, people are saying, oh, taxes. You go to Britain, they are doing the same thing. So with taxes, you never get it right.
Would you reduce corporate tax?
We might.
You might reduce corporate tax.
We might.
Individual tax?
Although we would need to look into it and actually look at the areas, like I said. But with taxes, you actually never get it fully right.
But what's the principle behind your tax reform? Would it be to try to make the tax system a little fairer? In other words, take a lot more from those who have and a lot less from those who don't have?
Definitely.
Would you raise the threshold above which people
that would
start
make
paying
sense.
tax?
That would make sense, because, I mean, taxing less from those that do not have, it means that you are taxing them in a way where you are being fair. Yeah. And those that have more, you need to tax more, but you don't need to overtax them as well, in a way that you really make them to feel so unwelcome. Yeah, so that would not be fair. So that's why I'm saying with taxes, one needs to be very, very careful, because you do this, you are right, you do this, you are wrong, but then you need to
find a balance.
A balance, so as much as possible.
Net, there will be a reduction of tax under an IFP government. Let's move on to the other plank of that, which is the small business sector. I mean, we talk about jobs. I didn't want to frame the discussion as a discussion around jobs. I want to talk about in specific terms, in terms of how we create those jobs. Now, one of the areas that you address is the small business sector. What would you change? This is my stock question. I want to know what is different.
Well, definitely you need to know what is different, because, you know, when it comes to maybe the top 3 or the top 5 political parties, we fish from the same pond. So we fish from the same pond, so we get to hear the same problems coming from the people, but then the issue is the how do we address the matter. When it comes to small businesses or probably entrepreneurs, let's start with entrepreneurs. It is important to acknowledge how much they are putting into that, the big tax coffers. They are putting so much. They are putting billions. True. So it's important that entrepreneurs are actually empowered as much as possible, so that they can, empowered in the sense that they need to be empowered to run their businesses. They need to be empowered to ensure that they hire people. Because with entrepreneurs, you may undermine their hiring power. They may hire about 3 to 5 people, but believe me, those 3 to 5 people do make a difference. So it's important that all our entrepreneurs, or most of the organizations or most of the federations that are saying they're empowering our entrepreneurs, they actually do it diligently.
Is the Secretary General of South Africa's 3rd largest opposition party, that's the Inkatha Freedom Party. It's Sibongile Nkomo. Sibongile, thanks again for the time. As I said, so at the beginning we addressed how you guys want to increase foreign direct investment inside this economy tax reform, and we spoke a little bit about the small business sector and what specific measures you would take to improve it. And I wanted, as I said, to explore the concept of empowering these small businesses. How would you do that? I want to know what you will change.
Thank you very much. As I explained earlier, the small businesses are a very, very strong component of business in our country. They do put in quite a number of billions onto the major pool of money that is used in this country. Although we have seen that many of them are not well empowered when it comes to even how to run their businesses, the type of documentations that is needed, you know, all such type of things to actually assist them to run their businesses so that they don't operate at a loss. But they operate in such a way that they do get profit and they can hire people.
You want to reduce the cost of doing business for the small business
Definitely.
How will you do that?
We will actually do it through ensuring that there are specific policies that are looking at empowering them, like policies that would state that, you know, to be an entrepreneur is a critical component. They are business people just like big business. They need to be acknowledged just like big business that they are a business. We also need to ensure, as part of our policy is stating, that entrepreneurs are actually brought onto the fold when discussions are actually made about themselves and with themselves, so that everything is done with them on board. We consult them as much as possible, because they play such a very important aspect. One other thing that is quite critical is also the monitoring of small business. We need to come up with
from a government perspective.
Yes, from a government perspective. It can be local government, it can be provincial government, it can be national government, so that they don't fail. because they play such an important aspect. They may be selling tomatoes at the corner of a street, but believe me, if you've got a person selling tomatoes and he has got 5 other corners where he has got people, it means that he has also created employment.
But you don't want to babysit them at the same time.
No. We don't babysit. Just like, and they don't need that. They don't need that. They've done it for years. They've actually been in business for many years. They don't need babysitting. They've been doing it themselves. It's just a matter of assisting them and monitoring them. Babysitting, definitely not. They would feel extremely offended. Many of them actually started with a lot of the businesses that we see today in our country, like Itokfel, like coming together as black people and doing ABCD. So they don't need babysitting. They are good, they are capable. It's just a matter of working with them.
Absolutely. Like I always keep saying that Anglo-American in 1898 or whenever they started 1890, they were a small business. Certainly when they began. So if you nurture it, you get it right. Let's move on to the thorny issue of labor reform. Across many fora, what you hear is that South Africa's labor laws are too rigid. The ANC, because of its alliance with the unions, is unable to reform the country's labor laws effectively to make it possible for businesses, particularly, to hire and fire. Where do you stand?
That is quite true, actually, when it comes to the labor laws in this country, which have been adopted by the ruling party. Most of those laws are so rigid and stiff, and they have driven a lot of the business away. They actually started many years back when they wanted even business not to come and invest in South Africa. That was even before the 95s, when it came up to, you know, areas that were quite difficult for business to come in. Right now, we have this, they call themselves the tripartite. Where you get where you get the ANC, COSATU, and the South African Communist Party. They say they talk from the same voice, but definitely it's not, because you do find that most of the laws which are made by the ANC, COSATU is against them, especially the labor laws.
Recently.
As a result, then you do find a lot of people from COSATU going to the streets, fighting with the ANC and doing whatever. And this is making it very, very difficult for business to come into the country, or for business that is in the country to operate. We've got major businesses that have moved out of South Africa, like VW and wherever. They've moved out because of these very rigid labor laws. You cannot have a sustainable...
So what would you do? What would be the first thing that you do? Would you scrap the Labor Relations Act? Scrap it?
There are certain aspects within the Labor Relations Act which are quite good. You must also remember that we do have members in Parliament, nationally, provincially, and whenever, who actually sit in some of those committees, who actually influence the processes in some of those committees. So one cannot say you completely
throw it away. So what should you change? Would you make it easier for business to hire and fire? Let me be direct.
Let me state it in this manner. Business, whilst it has the power to fire, it cannot fire the way it just likes, where somebody just gets into a job in the morning and then somebody is told that you have been fired. There has to be processes that are followed. We believe in that. We believe in those processes. But we also believe that the employee also has rights. So both have rights. There isn't that, or should I put it like this? There has been a problem where business has found it very difficult to even impose or even come up with regulations that will ensure that the workers actually produce, or they work, or they are in an environment that will ensure that there is profit and there is work and everything goes on. You know, it's like if you have hired somebody, you have actually made a situation very difficult for yourself as the employer, and it shouldn't be like that. So we are looking at reforming this so that the employer is happy and the employee is happy.
If you look internationally, which country would best represent a system that you'd like to work in this country? The Americans?
Some of the Scandinavian countries have done quite well. And I must also state that Germany has also done well. Well, then you can look at the US and some of the other countries. But there's some of these countries that have done very well, where we have borrowed some of the policies formed. We've actually been to Germany a few times, a few of the Scandinavian countries. We've been to the US as well, and Britain, because if you come up with such a policy, you need to visit all those countries, because in one country you may get 2 aspects, in another one you may get 1. So research has actually been done over a couple of years, even by our party, to really come up with the best possible way of addressing.
I was just thinking that since you said you are free marketeers, the US would naturally you know, be the better representation, if you like, or for what you would want to implement more than the other. But I wanted to tie that conversation again to the whole issue around free market economics and what we have seen since 2008. And I think we can safely say that we have seen the emergence again of the state coming in and playing a role inside the economy, perhaps more than has been the case before. We can cite the rescue of the American banks. We can cite what the British government has been doing and the billions and billions of pounds that they've been pumping into the economy. We can look at what was also happened in countries such as Germany, etc., etc. How do you reconcile that with the view that free market economics is the way forward? Because it does have its force, doesn't it?
It definitely does. And I must state that, you know, having been to a few countries as the IFP or as government, where it was different political parties, you won't believe it, we even went to countries like China.
You did.
And we were surprised
that even
China now is going for the free market system. They actually call theirs a mixed economy, where they are still keeping a little bit of what they believed in, but they are now borrowing from other countries as well. That is very important to do that, and that needs to be done periodically, where countries need to look at that, where we believe that as South Africa, we need to look at that and actually say to ourselves, what is it that needs to change? Because at times you may be implementing a policy, like the policy which has, or like the policies which have been pushed probably by COSATU or the South African Communist Party, and those policies have not worked for our country. And if those need to be changed, like we are saying as the IFP that we go for a free market system, we believe in ABCD, then things need to change.
Then you would change those things.
Definitely.
You won't be like the Republicans and say, you know what you need is simple, very, very simple, small government, that's it. Don't let the government grow, just let the private sector do on its own.
We actually believe, like I stated earlier, in a free market system. That is very important, as well as the dissemination of power. The dissemination of power in a way that the national government does hold the main fiscus, and then we have our provinces, which are also getting a certain percentage from the national government. They also have provincial revenue which they are coming up with, and that is important to us as the IFP, because we are not dealing with that policy now, me and you, but I would just like to state that the provinces were actually formed due to the CODESA negotiations being pushed by the IFP, because we believed, and we still believe, in the decentralization of powers. So the provinces are actually where they are now, because the IFP, actually, if one were to go and look at Hansard of CODESA, you will see it over time. That was our major push, and thank God we won.
Okay, so we've got 2 minutes of the show left, and I wanted to leave it to you to tell me what specific things you would change if May 7 says the IFP is the biggest party in Parliament in terms of economic policy.
Firstly, I would just like to state that I think then I would like to go for our manifesto. The IFP manifesto, which was launched the 2nd of March, where we looked at critical areas. There's about 8 areas that we looked at. Part of the issues which me and you never spoke about when it comes to the economic policy is the issue of getting our people away from the dependency. Which
we're talking
seems
social
to be
grants.
Pardon?
Social grants.
Yes,
would you scrap them?
No. We wouldn't scrap them completely. But we would actually advise that our people that would be in charge of the different areas, that it is important that with those social grants, we ensure that they are given to the people that deserve them, and to the people that can actually start out on businesses with those social grants, they actually do that.
Rather than
but we take out this concept of dependency. Because in other countries in the world, we have a system where you find that the grandma is still alive, she's getting a social grant, the grandpa, the mom and the dad, probably the children, everybody is getting a social grant.
You've got 30 seconds to tell me two more.
And then we also have the issue of service delivery and corruption, which are problematic. When it comes to service delivery, we have seen a lot of the service delivery protests, and we will definitely advise our people and our government at the time when we take control to actually do away with a lot of these service delivery protests by delivering. And then corruption. Corruption is actually the greatest scourge that we have in our country, where a lot of the people from the ruling party are actually people that are perceived to be corrupt. A lot of monies have been taken from the public purse, from the shareholders, including Kandla, and we are saying to the people of South Africa, corruption has to stop. All the people that are labeled as corrupt, they need to be arrested.